Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, the Mai Pedig Vav Halacha Beis. We're going to be learning today Daf Nun Hey. We left off on Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Amid. This is the first time, and it's good that this happened to us in the past forever, that we are learning the Daf over again. And with Hashem's help, we're going to get this the way it has to be. Just quickly going back. In Halacha Beis, in the Mishnah, the case the Mishnah gave was when there was a Kohen who was a Mekabel, and Yisrael was a landowner, that the Kohen keeps his own Trumas U'Maisros is the given. Question is, does he have the automatic rights to the owner's Trumas U'Maisros? That was subject to a Machlekes Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer. Everything that we will learn today won't need to take any side in this argument, but let's just quickly review the Machlekes. The Chachamim, the Tanakama holds that Kishem Shecholkin Batruma, just like the sharecroppers' agreement was that everyone gets their part, whether it's Lemechza, L'Shlish, L'Reviyah. And by just for the record, the Shlish can go either way. I mean, yeah, normally you would think that the sharecropper gets a Shlish. It depends. Every place had their own minig. So whatever their agreement was, just like they divide the chulin, the chachamim, the Tanakama holds kach cholkin betruma, which means that unless stipulated, stam, everyone has the rights to their own trumais u'maisros, and Rabbi Eliezer holds that hamaiser shalohen. In other words, the kohen, the mekabel, has the rights to the trumas u'maisros from the landowner. Sha'almanas kein bo'u nase koimer, as we learned in the previous sugya. Now today, we're going to begin with a Braisa that's first going to give us the opposite case, where you have a Yisrael, a Mekabel, and a Kohen, a landowner. Then the Braisa is going to go back to the case of the Mishnah, but we're going to be focusing on an entirely different angle. And let me say like this. There's going to be a huge machlekes in this daf throughout between the Pnei Moshe and the Maharav Fulda. If we have time, just once, let's all together read the Maharav Fulda to appreciate how this whole sugya is either or. The Pnei Moshe's approach of this entire sugya will be the following. L'kula alma, there is a prohibition, and these are the words for a kohen to be misayeya bebeis hagramis, which means that when Balabatim, which were Yisraelim, were finalizing their product, they were leading it into the Gemar Malachim, which would be on the threshing floor, where they would thresh it, they would make the smooth pile. People need help. There's a rule that a kohen is not allowed to go and offer his help pro bono with the kavana, I'm helping the Yisrael, he's going to give me the truma. That is something that's awesome. That Isur is termed as Kohen HaMesayeh Bebeis HaGronis. What we will be discussing today, L'Pnei Moshe, is actually, it's going to be ironic. I'll point it out when we learn it inside. It's going to be as a type of exchange that's going in the opposite direction of the Kohen HaMesayeh Bebeis HaGronis. But the Chazal, according to the Pnei Moshe, extend the Isur of Kohen Mesayeh Bebeis HaGronis. It's not only if the Kohen is doing the work in order to get the Truma, the opposite is also prohibited. I'll explain you what the opposite means when we learn it inside. And therefore, going forward, today's daf, I'm going to use the words an exchange. Any type of exchange of work for Truma, in whichever direction it's going, is going to be an extension, prohibited as an extension of Kohen HaMesayeh Bebeis HaGronis. The Maraful is going to learn this entire daf today, that the issues that we will be discussing will be an extension of another prohibition, and that is that a kohen is not allowed to pay his debt with maisros. It's called Perei HaChoyva b'maisros. I'll read it inside. It's something different, and yet indeed there is a machlokes, which is very common. And again, we're going to learn the Gemara according to the understanding of the Pnei Moshe. Most important, just I know that this, what's going to go online will not be where we got stuck yesterday, but at the end of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, when we're going to be learning the last case in the Amud, where it's written our girsa, which is also going to be for people who are using the art scroll. The girsa is Yisrael shekibel sadem Yisrael. We will not read it that way. We will read it kifi girsa the marafulda, and that is the Yisrael shekibel sadem mikoyin. All of this will make big the whole. We always know we have to acknowledge, but we experienced it, that the shinoi of these nuschos mamish change everything. Everything. Sometimes also when we learn the Gemara, I'm going back and forth for the Gemara folder, just without convenient. There's no kavanah. I cannot do this in this daf. We're going to learn the whole thing Pnei Moshe. It's one approach. And we're going to have a brayso on daf nun hey amud aleph, and there's going to be an apparent stira between the Reish and the Seifa, and there's going to be two ways of reconciling the stira, as we'll have on top of nun hey amud beis, and ultimately it's going to lead us into a machlokes between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yochanan, and that's going to be very important because this is going to lead us into tomorrow's daf. This is a topic that we spoke many times in the Bavli. Whenever we quoted this topic, to my knowledge, we only quoted the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan's words is that Ein Adam Noisen Ma'asroisev B'Toivas Hana'a, which means that I'm a Yisrael. Hashem gave me the obligation of separating Trumas U'Maisros, but Hashem gave me the right to determine to which kohen and to which lady I'm going to give it to. Am I allowed to get some sort of financial benefit, not directly from the person who's receiving it? That for sure not. So a kohen is not allowed to pay me. He's not going to pay me for the trumas. He'll pay me epis. He'll pay me a little bit. It's called the toivas hana. I'm charging to sell the privilege of choosing that God gave me. Rabbi Yochanan holds, I not only cannot get money from the recipient, if there's a third party that's giving me money, that's something that's not allowed. And Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chanina holds there is no such a prohibition, just to make it clear for the record, because Baruch Hashem, I got into Daf Nun Vav, that both of these opinions will be qualified. There'll be areas where everyone will agree that Ein Adam Noisen. We'll see whether it goes in the other direction. But B'negei our topic, this is going to unfold, there's going to be a machlokes whether there is an issue with it or not. And accordingly, we're gonna understand the Baraisa and Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis one way or the other, based on whether we follow Rabbi Yochanan or whether we follow Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chanina. That's going to be today's daf, and let's go right away inside. Okay, so as we mentioned, the Gemara is beginning with an opposite case of the Mishnah, and then we're going to go into the case of the Mishnah. So the Braisa begins, Yisrael shekibel sadem mikoyin. In other words, in the Braisa now, I'll call this the Reisha of the first Braisa on this Amit. The Yisrael is the Mikabel. The landowner is the Koyin. This is the opposite case of the Mishnah. Now, Omar Loi, if the Mikabel, the Yisrael, tells the Koyin, whether Almanas Sheyu HaMaisra Shali, people jump. Why would the Yisrael want the Maisras, Simcha? I'll tell you why. Not because he's planning to eat it. God forbid. He wants to have the privilege of choosing to give it to the coin of his choice. And if he said so clearly, or if the Yisrael the Makabel agreed to give the kohen, the owner, the other direction, there it's mamish giving it to him, oy sholcha, or shali v'sholcha, everyone will do with their truma as they please. If all of that was explicitly stipulated, in all of these cases, mutter. Now you're wondering, what's the chiddush with that? So we're going to read the Pnei Moshe. The whole daf will learn the Pnei Moshe, but I'll tell you by heart, there is no chiddush with this. This is an intro to make a contrast with the case of the Mishnah. And make no mistake that, again, I know that Danny asked yesterday, our whole sugi, the whole daf nunei, is it following the Chachamim or Rabbi Eliezer? It can follow both. Because like I quoted in the intro, even the Chachamim are moedim in the case of the Mishnah, which is the opposite of this case. That if it was explicit, that Rabbi Eliezer says the word Sha'almanas kein bo, that's our presumption. But if they clearly stipulate it in the case of the Mishnah, where the Makabel is the kohen, and the Makabel wants to get, and he says, I'm going to be working for you, the Gemara until now said it's okay. But we're gonna take up with that right now. But let's read inside the Pnei Moshe. So guys, keep one finger, the whole daf today, one finger in the Gemara, We're going to start with 6 lines from the top of the Amud and the Pnei Moshe. Yisrael shekibul sadam mikoyin, and this is a Tosefta. And Amar Loy, again, this is the opposite case of the Mishnah. Just now we're learning where the Yisrael is the Mekabel. Amanash Shamais is either Shali or Amanash Shamais Shalach or Almanas that will divide it. Shamais Shalach Koloimer Ben Shakoyin, who's the Baal Hakarka, his Nekach. Another detail the Pnei Moshe is adding: who's making the stipulation? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who's making that, whether the owner is making it or whether the Yisrael, the Mekabel, is making it, and doesn't matter what they're saying, whether Amanash Shamais Shalcha or Shali or Shalcha. In all of that muter, look inside the Pnei Moshe. V'hasim Goddess Asur. Can you imagine? And so you look at these Girsois, and the Pnei Moshe says, I'm going to follow the Girsa muter. The Girsa Dahachi has to be Ikris, because the Mai Chashashe Ikahache, when the Kohen is the Baal Hasadim. Why is he saying, in other words, I already spoke out in the introduction, there's going to be, according to the Pnei Moshe's understanding, a potential extension of the prohibition of a Kohen HaMisayeh Bebeis HaGronos, as we'll see soon, but that is not Shaykh when the Yisrael is the Mekabel, because he's the one doing all the work. He is the one doing all the work. But look, keep your finger, please, in the Pnei Moshe. We're up to, in the Pnei Moshe, 18 lines from the top of the Amid, but go back into the Braisa. But now the Braisa continues in the case of the Mishnah. When the Kohen is a Mekabel, Kohen goes from Israel. And now, Amaloi, the Kohen told the Yisrael owner, Almanas, Sheyu HaMaisre Shali, I want to get to all your Maisres. And by the way, what did we learn in the end of the last Sug in Daf Nun Dalet? That even the Chachamim are moida, that after Kohen said that, it's mutter. So Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't even need to say. But here he said it mutter. Keep your finger in here, but look inside the Pnei Moshe. Kohen Shavim Yisrael b'zeh yesh chilik. There's a difference. If the Kohen, the Mekabel, is making the stipulation, Amaloi, which is the case of Rabbi Eliezer, the Chachamim that we learned before, Amaloi Almanasha Ma'aser Shali mutter the Ein Kan Isur, which we'll learn in a moment. Utanoi Kayim, Kidam Rin and Liel, the first line in the Pnei Moshe under the Gemara, the Hakol Maidam, even the Chachamim Ramaida, Sheim Hayat Naim before his name, Shia Meiser Shal Kayin Amakabel, Levi Atnai Kayim. Now we're starting. So where are we up? Now keep your finger, guys, in the Pnei Moshe, 2 lines under the Gemara and back inside the Brais. Aber, however, if Shalcham, Shalcham means that that the Kohen is agreeing not only for the Yisrael to keep his, which according to Rabbi Eliezer, he has to agree. He's agreeing, saying more than that. I'm going to give you my truma, not for the Yisrael to eat it, but the Yisrael is going to have more to give to the Kohen of his choice. That is asur. Why is that asur? Before we go shalhi v'shalcha, because that's going to be amended. Shalcha asur says the Pnei Moshe. She'im amar kohen amakabel Yisrael, to the Yisrael who's the owner. Almanasha ha'ma'aser shalcha, meaning not that you're going to eat it. That v'tuchalit l'chol mishe tirtze ze asur. We never had that case until now. Now, according to the Pnei Moshe, why is that asur? Because it looks like it's kohen hamesiyah bebeis hagranos. Kohen hamesiyah bebeis hagranos means, guys, let me use these words, guys. A kohen cannot work for free to get the truma. Everyone agrees to that. What's happening over here? The kohen is giving his truma to get what? To get the job. So I'm using the words exchange. There is an exchange of truma and work. The isur, the befeidische isur, kohen ha-mesayeya, is when the kohen is giving the work to get the truma. The chiddush of the Braisa is that even in the other direction, here the kohen is giving his truma to get work. It's also, it looks like it. It's like a maras ayin. It looks like it. The first widest.
Why the other way is it okay?
The other way it's okay. The other way it's okay.
There you're actually doing it. Forget looking like
no,
it. You're actually getting a benefit.
No. Okay, so if the Yisrael is doing the work, which is the first case in the Braisa, for sure it's okay. Because the Yisrael is doing the work. Here, the Kohen is doing the work. Kohen is doing something. Okay, now, the first widest line of innovation. The Moichel.
No, when I say the other way, I don't mean the other case. I mean in this case, but where he says, I get it, meaning I'm getting the Yisrael stuff, the Kohen, the worker.
That's okay. That's okay.
Why is that okay? That's really an exchange. What do you mean?
No, because the owner gave him work and the owner gave him the truma.
Doesn't that look like Messiah?
No. When the Kohen is getting it all, that's called truma. He's getting his gift. Not only is the Yisrael, the owner, giving him the truma, he's giving him a job. If everything is flowing in one direction, then it's mutter. You can challenge me as much as you want. I'm prepared today. I got this. I chap this good. In other words, the exchange is what's problematic, but let's make one thing clear. This is not Kohen HaMisayeh, it's Kohen HaMisayeh. Now, let's finish reading the Pnei Moshe. The first, the Moichelu Chelkem and Amaisim, Al Menashi, for the job. That's prohibited. Now, just to spend one moment, I know we have the time for it. I just to appreciate this. Look inside the Maraful, the 3 lines from the top, all the way on top of the Amid. Shalcha Asur, Afil Rabban Nitzrecha, Lefika Chacha Shalcha Asur, Denira Ki Ilu Noisan Lai HaMaisers B'Shvil Shenasam Lai Sodeu B'Kablanus Denira Ki Poirea Chayvim and HaMaisers. That's when we read the words, which is a whole different issue. A Kohen cannot pay his debt with Maisers. And this looks like the Kohen is paying his debt. What's the debt? I owe you for giving me a job by allowing to. Guys, that's not the issue of an exchange, and this will play itself out, therefore, in a whole different direction. It's also going to be connected to a different gears that the Marafulda has. Just want you to see that. But we're going to come back and we're going to stick until the end with the Pnei Moshe. The whole sugya is about whether there's a problem of ki koyin amisayeh whenever there is a maras ayin of koyin amisayeh because there is an exchange. Now, keep your finger still in the Pnei Moshe. Here's where we get tripped up in the Gemara. No, the Gemara itself is pointing out that the Gersois are difficult. Shaliv v'sholcha. Now, why does Shaliv v'sholcha? Shaliv v'sholcha until now, Kayman, was where everyone gets to keep their share. Where everyone gets to keep their share. Everyone keeping their share should never be a problem. But the Baraisa makes it into a problem. Shaliv v'sholcha, and by the way, the Pnei Moshe has the words asur. But then he says, not always. Im kibla mimenu k'daracha mekablim mutar v'im lav asur. Keep your finger in the Gemara. Look inside the Pnei Moshe, the second widest line. Which is im kibla mimenu k'daracha mekablim. K'daracha mekablim, as we'll explain in a moment. Shekol hamakablim nahaglin kach, which is everyone gets their share. There's no reduction. Everything we learned yesterday is going to be different now. Is mutar v'im lav asur. In other words, there was a case, Simcha, where if everyone gets their share, it's asur. There was a case that if everyone gets their share, is mutar. What does it mean? Kederach hamakablim? We'll explain that in a moment. But the Gemara right away jumps in. Doesn't make sense. Why would they even have to say shaliv v'sholcha? Now I want to speak out to Danny's question. The presumption of the question is based on us paskening, not like Rabbi Eliezer. Why would we? Rabbi Eliezer is Shamuti. Rabbi Eliezer is the Das Yachid. Our Mishnah taught us, and by the way, the Seifa, our case now is the case of the Mishnah. The Kohen is the Makabel. The Yisrael is the owner. What did the Chachamim say in the Mishnah? Everyone keeps their part. How is it even possible for there to be a case? Why would why would that be us? That's the Gemara's kash. Eina Maisra Shaloi, really it's Shalohen? That's the gears of the Pnei Moshe. Like, why do we even need to have a case where they say Shaliv Shalcha? That's the kash. We pass like the Chachamim. So even if they wouldn't have said anything, it would have been everyone keeps their share. How is it even possible for there to be a case where if they stipulate it, it depends? Why? What is that? How would that work? Answers the Gemara. Elo hacheni. Let me tell you what the Braisa means. You're right, Danny. Shaliv Shalcha is the default because we paskin like the Chachamim. And even if they verbalize that which is given, you're not making it worse. Shali v'shalcha is mutter. We have to amend the Braisa. What are we amending the Braisa? That if they said, this is the Yisrael guys, Shali, Shali. Shalcha, Shali v'shalcha. Shalcha, Shali v'shalcha. He's claiming some of the Yisrael's of the Yisrael's portion of tithes. Says the Bryce on that im kiblu menu kedaracham kablim. We're not. Whoever's using the art scroll, we're not going to learn it the way it says in the art scroll. Look inside the Pnei Moshe, 6 lines from the bottom, or the 4th line in the widest lines. Eloha cheni elakach tzarach lafadish. She'amaloi hay Yisrael. It's mamish the opposite of the art scroll. Simcha, if the coin is getting more than he deserves, always mutter, because there's no exchange. But if mamish gavaldik, if the owner is telling the coin, if the owner tells the coin, you get the job, I'm getting all of your meisters, that's awesome. Why is that awesome? Because it's an exchange. It's kekoina misayeh. What happens if the landowner says, I want some of yours? That should also be awesome. Still an exchange. So the Braisa says that there were certain localities in which that was the norm.
The landowner or
the landowner?
Or the worker?
No. The Pnei Moshe.
That's the worker's the coin.
The worker's the coin. And the coin we already learned yesterday, the coin can get everything from the landowner. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't even have to say it. But if he says it, he gets it. Because he's getting the job and he's getting the truma. There's no exchange. What the Gemara is answering here is that the Braisa is saying that the owner, the Yisrael, cannot take the trumas from the coin, even if they said so befedish, right, because there is an exchange. What happens if the landowner is claiming some of it? The landowner is saying,
not some of his,
some of the coins. You see how that's the Pnei Moshe. Befedish. Everything we got stuck yesterday is because there's no critique over here. There's another way of learning. I just learned this Gemara with the Pnei Moshe. It fits. And it's Kamaldik. Now, why would that be mutter? 1 second, guys. Why would that ever be mutter? The Bryce is telling you that there were places that the derech hamekablin was that the owner, the Yisrael, would get some of the trumas of the makabel. Let's say, guys, they'd split it 50-50. There were certain places that from the 50 of the kohen that worked, of whoever it worked, some of that went to the Yisrael. So even though there is an exchange, if that's the way it's done, which means even if they wouldn't have said, the owner, what's mine is mine. I'm keeping all of my trumas omaisis. I'm getting my chulin and I'm doing whatever I want. And some of your trumas are coming to me. If this is the way it's done, it doesn't matter if there's an exchange, because that's kederech hamekablim. Don't forget, kohen hamisayeya and our issue is in the opposite directions. This is not kohen hamisayeya. It looks like kohen hamisayeya, but if they're following the norm, there's no issue of it appears like they're making an exchange. They're simply following the way everyone does. Word by word, but now we'll read what I said in the Pnei Moshe. That, guys, 6 lines from the bottom. Then you see that the owner is telling the kohen, shali. In addition, v'shalcha, what about the chelik of your maestros, you worker, you kohen hamakabel, should be shali v'shalcha. Hachelik hasheni shuhu magia l'cha, split, shali v'shalcha. B'zeh the mechalkin and shapin. Here the Braisa makes the following differentiation, that im kiblim imenu k'derech hamekablim. What does that mean? Don't read about the words reduction. Nothing with that. Im kachu haminig sham she'im hamekabel is koinoi levi, and therefore you would think that, come on, the guys, the mekabel should get to keep his. Nevertheless, tough luck. Still, which gives the landowner the right for who mutter. If that is the norm, I'm not going to make this issue that it appears like kohen hamisayah. But vim lav asur the fisher zeh kohen hamakabel shemisratze bekach habe kikohen hamisayah bebeis hagronos. Beautiful.
How does it become the norm?
I don't know. That's a good question, Kate. But if it's the norm, in other words, the point that Braisa is concluding is that the kikoyan amisayea is if they're going outside the norm. If you're following the norm, I don't care.
And the Balabas Yisrael taking all of the sharecroppers.
There was never such a minute.
That could never be
I think it was never the norm. I think that's why they don't say it. Because I was thinking that yesterday, I was preparing. Like, what happens if that's the minute?
Right.
Could be. It's just that's not the case. It didn't work that way.
So him trying to take it all for sure is usher. Them each getting their own is for sure mutter.
Yeah.
Him trying to take part of his depends if that's the minhag or not.
That's right. And the coin, the makabel can always take it all. According to Rabbi Eliezer, without a stipulation. According to Chachamim, with a stipulation. B'diyuk. Let's go back. Let's read it inside. Elohim, I'm just reading it inside the Gemara. Shalcha is, I'm sorry, Shali. This is the Yisrael, the owner. Shali. Shalcha, the owner is telling the kohen makabel, Shali v'shalcha, im kiblu mimenu kadarach makabel. If that's the norm agreement, muter, v'imlav asur, atkan. It's whoever's using an art scroll, it's nothing to do with the way the art scroll learns the Gemara. Now, the biggest piece, and this is where we got tripped up, because our girsa is Yisrael, Shekilim Yisadam Yisrael. That's not the way we're going to learn it. Look inside the Pnei Moshe. Yisrael, Shekibel Sada, Mikoyen. In other words, we're going back to the first case in the Braisa today. It's important. It's important that the owner is the Kohen. The owner is a Kohen. The Yisrael is the one doing the work. We learned in the Braisa today that any stipulation would be valid here. That's what we had in the first Braisa. Right? Right. Because, okay, there's no issue on a Yisrael. The issue is on the Kohen to be Messiah. Okay. Yisrael should kibel sada mikoyen. And he says, Almanas. What's the default, Simcha? You have to hold up. If the Yisrael is the worker, the owner is a kohen, what's the default? Let's go like Chachamim. What did we learn in the Mishnah? Each one gets their own. So comes along the Yisrael, and he tells the kohen, "You're not keeping yours." This is coming from the Makabel. It's amazing. Now, the Yisrael is not, see, we never had this in a new case now. So it's not that the Yisrael is asking it. Yisrael is telling the owner that I will agree to work for you as long as you will give your chelik of the balabas to a certain kohen or a Levi. Keep this case in your mind. The Yisrael is the Makabel. The owner is a Kohen. The Makabel is stipulating to the owner, of course I have to give you half or 2/3. Whatever you're separating is going to a specific Kohen. The Braisa says, Asur, we're going to call that Teresha. And then the Sefer says, well, give it to me, for me to give it to that person, mutter. So without learning anything, but you would think, that if he gives it directly, it's also if he gives it through the kohen, nothing to do with that. The Gemara says, what's the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa? Okay, and here we have two answers. Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis, Ravacha and Rabbi Yosef. Guys, the Reisha says Asur, the Seifa says Mutter. Okay, Amar Ravacha, Im Tirtze Beinei, look inside the Pnei Moshe. Keep your finger in the Gemara by Rabbi Yossi. Look inside the Pnei Moshe. Amar Avachim Tirtze B'nei Koloimer. Guys, the Balasada is Kohen. Who's the Balasada? Simcha. No, I know it's confusing. Okay. That's I have to just keep remembering that the Baal Hasada is the Kohen. The Yisrael is a Makabel. The Yisrael wants all the Truma, basically. The Yisrael wants all the Truma. Koloimer Hainu Di Eshchiluk B'nei. The Haseifa says Mutter. The Seifa mighty She'amaloi She'nachaloi B'neinu. He begins by saying, I'm not demanding anything. I'm allowing for the base. What's the base? What's the chachamim in the Mishnah?
Mine is mine, yours is yours.
But he's making a request. See, there's a demand and there's a request. When you do business and you make a request, the other person can say no, but there's a certain type of pressure. That's the case. So when is it muter? If he's not making a demand, he's saying the kiven since he allows the kohen the balasada to say no, the kohen could say no. It's not a demand. So it's really, we still view the kohen is getting his chelik, and then the kohen to make the mekabel, to make the worker feel good. What would be the ism? Aval bereisha. Shoya al tanai al menas came shiamaisel plaining. Oh. Now, why is the kohen giving up his truma? Why is the kohen giving up his truma if he has to?
He wants the guy to work.
Because he needs a worker. That's fighting an exchange. That's an exchange. That will be the issue. Because whenever there is an exchange, kohen the kiven shezek koyenu. The owner is the kohen. See, that's the whole gears that has to work this way. What's the exchange? What's the exchange? Because he wants a worker. The Yisrael is the work. The Yisrael is telling the kohen, I'll agree to work for you if you have to give it to a kohen. Whenever a kohen is giving up truma to get, which is the opposite of kohen amisayeya, don't forget that, it's ki kohen amisayeya, and that's the isur of this today's daf, according to the Pnei Moshe. Makes sense. Makes sense.
I thought in the intro you made a distinction between this concept of exchange, which is kind of like selling the Tevis up, versus
no. We didn't touch kohen. We didn't touch Tevis yet.
Like a guy coming to the thing and he's going to help you out, and based on that, whatever, there's a certain perk for doing that. He gets the Meisers.
Yes,
whatever,
true.
Right? So here it's Yisrael doing it. How do you fit Nisayeh into Yisrael doing
Okay,
this?
I want to just make something very clear. The selling the Tevis is not related to this at all. We'll get to that in 2 lines from now. Kohen Misayeya is where the kohen gives the work to get the truma. Kohen gives the work to get the truma. Here we're going in the opposite direction,
right?
So, which is why it's not kohen Misayeya, but that's the whole chiddush of today's sugya. It's ki kohen Misayeya. How is it similar to kohen Misayeya? There is an exchange of truma and work. There is an exchange of kohen for work. Use these words. Fits. Kohen Misayeya is where the kohen gives the work and he gets the truma.
Right.
Here it's going in the opposite direction. It's also us. Listen, it works. So the way Rav Acha explains the Braisa, Reisha Seifa, is that a request is allowed, even though in most cases, since the kohen, the balasada, wants a worker, he'll acquiesce. But as long as he's not chayiv to acquiesce, it's okay. That's a chiddush.
Not in the contract.
It's not. It's in the. It's a required suggested donation. But if you have to, it's awesome. Why kohen misayeh? But the exchange is between who and who. Halkap. What's the kohen? It's between the bal hasada and the worker. Remember this. The issue is between the owner and the worker. It's nothing to do with the recipient. We'll get to that later in a moment.
No, but the worker knows the Bal Hasada has no choice.
That's not true. The Balasada can find another worker. My father always said that. You know, he was never intimidated by the union. We'll get him more workers. He'll do it himself.
Can't find. Okay, I thought he's having a hard time finding
that
workers.
Was his attitude. Yeah, but it's an attitude. You know, some workers intimidate the owners. Without me, you have nothing. That was the communists. Some people that are capitalists, they have a different attitude. You choose which world you want to live in. Okay, right. Now, Rabbi Yossi says a whole different explanation. I'm going to take out the words David of Doichik. This is not a Doichik. He's adding another issue that we never dealt with. Rabbi Yossi. That the Tnan Mutter, guys, the Seifa is where it's Mutter. Is Bishik look at that Kablim. I'll tell you that in a moment. It's going to mean exactly what it meant, and according to the Pnei Moshe and Amad Aleph. For the At Amar Asur is beloy Bishaloi Kibla Kedar Kablim. Look inside the Pnei Moshe. Says the Pnei Moshe Amar Rabbi Yossi. We're going to 9 lines from the top. The Balav Hachitalia Teira. Not the issue The Isser, the Heter, is not the way you learned it at all. Ella, there's a new issue here. Ella, Hadad the Tema, the Sefer. The Sefer is the one that says it's mutter, mighty. The Shekibla Kederach HaMekablam. Again, not reduction, the way the Pnei Moshe learned the Sana Madal, which means that if you are in a locality where the minig is, where the Mekabel gets to make that determination, from the owner, that will be the only reason why it would be mutter. This has to be the norm. A norm means it's not an exchange, and there is no other issue as well, as I'll speak in a moment. But the hein the at oman, this is the gears of the Pnei Moshe. Bereisha, that also is that there is no such an agreement. The norm in your place is that everyone gets their share. The Balasada gets his. And you're trying to change it. And what's the issue? That the there is no set minute. When there is no set minute, what do? Again, we're passing like the Chachamim. What did the Chachamim say? Cholkim b'shava, solchan aladin, va'anan tanan b'masnisim. They'll comment even more than that. He's quoting that in the next mission that we didn't learn yet. In this case, where again the kohen is the balasada and the Yisrael is a mekabel. Yisrael shkel and kohen levi. Hamaisness goes all to the owner. That's the norm. We didn't learn that yet. Oh, if you're changing the norm, it's even worse because it's not cholkim b'shava. In a case where the kohen is the balasada, then we'll see in the next mission the balasada by default gets everything. So you're changing that. That's how we'll begin. He's the kohen HaMesayeh. Doesn't care whether you're making a request, whether you're making a demand. It's always going to be us. The only time it can be mutter is when the norm is that the mekabel gets all of it. If that's not the norm, you can never do it. Now, Atkan, you would say, okay, so the argument is, how do you, halachically, could you differentiate between a request and a demand or not? Right? Rab Acha makes such a differentiation. Rabbi Yossi rejects that. Says the Gemara, it's much more than that. Now we're going to have a good thing. Now says the Gemara, Asya the Rabbi Yossi, ki Rabbi Yechanan, ud Rab Acha ki Rabbi Yossi b'Rab Chanina. Rabbi Yossi b'Rab Chanina is the one that says that us Adam noisin masreis b'toivas hana. A person is allowed, a Yisrael who has the right from God to determine to whom to give his trumas or maises, is allowed to monetize that right. We'll see more details tomorrow. Never from the kohen who's the recipient, but if someone else is giving him a few dollars, he owns that money. Now, what are we going to start to? In our case, the makabel. It doesn't matter whether it's a makabel, whether it's in our case, it's the makabel. What I want to say is like this: that until now, we only focused on the problem of the exchange between the balasada and the landowner. Now we're going to introduce another issue. You know what the other issue is? Who's getting it? Another coin is getting it. The recipient who's getting it, he's getting it from?
Yisrael.
He's getting that which belonged to the coin.
Oh. The owner or
the owner. And why did the kohen agree to give it to him? Because he's getting payment in the form of the Yisrael agreeing to work for him. Right. So until now, we were just looking at the issue of the exchange between the kohen and the makabel. Now the Gemara is going to say that the reason why Rabbi Yossi rejects Rav Acha, there's a logic, a request, a demand. He says there is another issue. Rabbi Yossi holds like Rabbi Yochanan that we can never allow a case where there is some sort of payment made for the privilege of the choice. So even if you're going to say that when there is a request and not a demand, you can argue it's not a real exchange. But there's another problem with that. What's the problem? Is that the recipient is going to be getting the trumais, in this case of the balasada. But why did he agree to give it to him? Because he's getting payment That in itself is an issue, even if it's not a demand. Beautiful. So good. Let's read it inside. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ein Adam Noisen Masreis B'Tovis Hana. So Rabbi Yossi follows Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yossi rejects Rabbi Acha's nuanced difference between demand and request. Let me use these words right now. Demand and request is only a solution if the only problem will be the exchange that's happening between the owner and the makabel. For that, he theoretically could have accepted, okay, if he's not demanding it, he's only requesting it, he's saying the words in tirza, so it's not the kohen ha-misayeh. That he can go with that, but he's not going to go with that. Why won't he go with that? Because at the end of the day, the recipient is getting truma. Why wouldn't the kohen keep it? Because he sold it. Because he's getting something for it. And Rabbi Yochanan does not allow money to be received, in this case, work to be received to determine whom to give the...
Why would the Minhag HaMakom change that?
No, if that's the Minhag HaMakom, then he gave it up automatically. By the way, the Minhag HaMakom, just for the record, is not for the coin, the owner, to give it to a specific person. The Minhag HaMakom would be, Danny, for the coin to give it to the makabel. That's something else. Just to make that clear. Another thing about okay? Whenever there's a Minhag HaMakom, no one is giving up. No one is selling their rights. They're just following the Minhag HaMakom.
It's like it was his all along. So
Yes. And another thing that's important that in the Sefer, Danny, just the words for your thing. In the Sefer, where the Brisa says it's mutter, look at the wording. It's not that the Balasad is giving it to a kohen. The Balasad is giving it to the Yisrael. I'll take it and I'll give it. In other words, whenever the makabel gets, or whatever the owner gets, no problem. It's not an exchange. It's not getting payment for Tovis Hana. So good. Now, Gavaldik, that's it. Now it's clear. For me, it's Gavaldik clear.
Word of Yeshua is you're never allowed to buy the rights of a kohen's truma to give to.
Let me say this. I want to say
you sold truma to give to a kohen.
Don't say the words buy the rights. You can't pay someone for it. And in our case, the Yisrael, the makabel, is paying not money. He's paying with his work for the owner to give it to someone. And even if it's not a demand, so there's no kohen ha-misayeh, but there's the other issue, is that the owner, who happens to be a kohen, is getting payment for someone else to get us through. Fits. Now, where do we get that issue from? What's the machloikis between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yochanan based upon? So my time, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chanina, pasuk and Parshas Nasai, where it says "Ve'ish es kadoshim lo yiyeh." The word kadoshim goes to Trumois, and this is not to the kohen. This is the Yisrael. God says that a man, a Yisrael, his truma is his. What does it mean? It's his. So it says it means that he's even allowed. Let me say it like this. I'm a Yisrael, Edo's a coin. If I have a field, can you go on my field and just take the truma? No. How do you know? Why not? It's not even mine. That's minimum. The ish es kadoshim lo yiyeh. It means it's mine. So minimum, it means you cannot take it. But Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chanina says more than that. Since you cannot take it, even though I cannot eat it, I own it. The balasada. And if I own it, I can get a Tovis Hana benefit from it. It's mine. However, Rabbi Yochanan says that the only thing God means when he says lo yiyeh is that Edo cannot grab it against my will. Lo yiyeh means yitnein, that I, the owner, have the right to choose whom to give it to. But I may never sell it, or I may never accept benefit to determine who to give it to. Now, there's more nuance in this we're going to learn tomorrow. I want to make it clear. The machlekes between Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, and Rabbi Yochanan. In other words, according to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chanina, the only issue is not the Tovis Hana, the kohen ha-misayeh. For kohen ha-misayeh, his intirtz is the best solution. Rabbi Yossi rejects that solution because even if the only issue would have been the kohen ha-misayeh, you can be you don't have to, but there's a problem here. when he is agreeing to it, that is him getting payment of the work and you're not allowed to do that according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yossi. So therefore, he needed to be machadish the minute, and then there's no issue. We have another minute. So Rabbi Yossi made. So how does he explain the Brais on Daf Nun Hey Yom Adaleh by saying that the only time it will be permitted if that's the norm. And the norm, by the way, again, would not mean that the owner gives it to the owner gives it to the makabel. The makabel has rights in it. The makabel then gives it to whoever he wants. That's the words in the Sefer. Look inside the Reish on the Sefer on Daf Nun Hey. And where the Brais says it's usher when he tells the owner, give it to that coin. Where the Sefer says it's mutter, he says, if it's to give it to me, for me to choose whom to give it to, it's mutter. According to Rabbi Yossi, the minig is he gave it to the makabel. The makabel got that. That's why there's no Tevis Hana issue. He's not giving it to someone, he's giving it to the makabel. Okay, I would have wanted to go further, but we'll stop over here and I'll go into the continued.